Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee Shop Talks. My name is Paulo Saldanha, and I'm both a physiologist and a coach, and the founder of the PowerWatch training system. I'm also the performance director of the Israel Startup Nation World Tour professional cycling team. These different hats have provided me with a unique perspective into the art and the science of coaching and of training. During these Sunday talks, we'll be delving into everything from training methodology to athlete mindsets. We'll be speaking to athletes and industry insiders in professional cycling, and we'll cover a wide variety of topics that we hope will shed. Today, we're going to catch up with Michael Woods from his base in Spain, where along with millions of others, he's stuck inside during this COVID-19 crisis. Mike rides for the Education First Pro Cycling World Tour team, and he's healing up from a broken femur sustained before the season shutdown in the Paris-Nice race. Just to set the table here, even though some of you would consider Mike a veteran of the World Tour cycling scene, I still consider him a rising star. I think that we have yet to see the best from Michael Woods, and I say this as Mike's coach over the last 6 years. Mike, welcome to the show, and thank you for doing this interview.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Yeah. So look, first I want to just congratulate you on the birth of your new daughter, Max. And how are she and Ellie doing?
They're doing great. She's now almost 3 months old. You saw her right after she was born. I'd say probably it was a day after you came into the hospital and saw her. She's a lot bigger. She's basically doubled in size. She's like me. She's probably doubled just like me. I've probably doubled in size in the last month. So we're on equal weight gain programs at the moment, but she's adorable. She's starting to smile and laugh, and she's perfect for being in quarantine with, she's not running around or anything because she can't yet, but it's been really nice to have some special time with her. Okay.
So a lot of things happening, Michael, the new baby, your crash with the broken leg, the COVID crisis, a lot of flux going on right now. I'm wondering how you're dealing with that with your new baby and your wife and stuff. Are things drawing you guys closer now that you're stuck inside, or do you have a different perspective on your sport a little bit?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways this crash was potentially one of the best things that could have happened to me. Same with as terrible as they say, coronavirus even has impacted me, I'd say, in a lot of positive ways. Certainly it's impacted me financially, but it has impacted me in great ways too. The fact that since I broke my femur, one of my first big concerns was the Olympics being impacted and me being able to ride successfully at the Olympics. However, with COVID-19 coming into play, that's set the Olympics back to another year, and all of a sudden I'm still in the game for the Olympics. And then breaking my femur was probably the most painful thing I've had to go through. However, it's been really nice to just be home, be with Max, my baby girl, and just spend some quality time with her that I wouldn't have had I still been racing, had the world been normal and the racing season continued. I would be at another race right now. Right now, I'd probably be heading off to the Ardennes Classics and not catching the first little laughs that Max has, or just spending some nice time with my wife as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great that with some dark clouds come a great silver lining there, and you could spend a ton of time with your wife and Maxie. I was thinking about your Olympics when you talked about it. One of the interesting pieces that came to mind for me was, the last time I remember being at the Olympics with you was Rio, obviously, and that was your first Olympic Games, and you hopped out of the terminal limping towards me, and I'm like, what's going on, Mike? You haven't really recovered from that injury and that crash. He goes, oh, no, I'm fine. It just hurts when I walk. It doesn't hurt when I ride. And I thought to myself, something's up with that. And then we later found out that you actually, I think, had a broken femur then as well. And in my mind, I was thinking, if the Olympics hadn't been kicked down the road, you probably would hold some kind of record for being the only guy to compete at both Olympic road races with some kind of residual fracture in his leg. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that would have been something I wouldn't have been very proud of to be a record holder of. But I think both yeah, that last Olympics was an amazing experience for me, and it was kind of this like dream realized. It was amazing having you there. It was amazing you being there, particularly because you were the guy that got me on this journey. My only goal when I first started cycling was to go to the Olympics, and then when you started working with me, that really became a possibility. And so to go to Rio with you there was really special. But it was also a moment where afterwards, I kind of felt like I had so much more left in the tank. I had so much more room to improve on, and I really had to kind of after Rio, I really had to shift and reshape my focus and change what my ultimate goals were in cycling. And I think over the last 3 4 years, it's been that change in goals, that change in mindset, the change in train that you and I have done have reflected that change in mindset, and that's what was most devastating when I first broke my femur and Paris lying on the side of the road. My thoughts went to this coming Olympics because I wasn't going to this coming. My goal in Tokyo, I wasn't going there just to participate. My big goal was to try and medal, if not win. And lying on the side of the road, seeing my leg in the state it was, I really wasn't sure if that would be a possibility. But now with it in 2021, I think we got a big shot at getting a medal, and I'm really looking forward to working with you to get there. And hopefully, when I get off the plane and you greet me at the terminal, I won't be walking with a limp.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about your preparation, how it's changed over the years. I remember very early on when I saw that you had some great capacity and your raw abilities were there. You had a good engine. The goal was to try and transfer you over from a runner to a cyclist more specifically. So a lot of the work that you used to do were based on these sort of power watts principles that we had that really hit the intensity peripheral adaptation piece a lot. And what's interesting about your evolution as a rider is the whole goal was in the beginning to say, let's convert over his periphery to be able to handle some of these high end loads. And let's hope that that can be the fastest strategy to get him to the best level. But then once you got there, which you did, things sort of shifted away from that intensity piece a little bit more and added those layers of volume. We kind of flipped training preparation on its head. Your approach now is one that's much more volume oriented, but it took you working on those short intensity pieces to get you to this point. Do you see that same evolution as I do?
Yeah, I think it's sort of necessity. Like to get into the world tour, you have to be very good at 1 to 5 minute power, particularly something that you really hit on at a power watts class in power watts. I still remember going into those sessions, and I was always so nervous coming out to Montreal and going into the studio because I just knew I was going to get worked so hard. But I'd come out invigorated, and that work that we did enabled me to get to the highest level of the sport. However, once you get into the world tour, it's a bit different. You're racing over 80 races in the season often, and the intensity is so high, and the racing intensity is so high that in my mind, and I think you're on obviously on the same page as my coach. You got to use those races actually as the opportunity to really hit those intensity factors and just kind of build the volume up to prepare yourself to handle that intensity when it comes.
Yeah. And one of the pieces as well that we didn't realize would be so critical and crucial to your performances was the sort of racecraft, race IQ component. And that actually took a lot more evolution over the course of the last few years. Can you explain a little bit how you evolved as a tactician from a neophyte to a world tour race contender in the last 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, when I first came into cycling, I mean, I was a classic runner. I just assumed because I was one of the better runners for my age in the world, I transitioned into cycling easily. However, that's not the case. Cycling is such a skill-oriented sport. There are guys in this world that are stronger than me, but they can't come close to beating me because at this point, my race IQ and my race skills are far higher. but it took a long time to get there. You and I spent a lot of time strategizing and working on ways of improving my skills. You helped me even. You sold me your mountain bike at one point just to work on the mountain bike skills as well. Yeah, gave me a smoking deal on a good little mountain bike, and just getting on the mountain bike as well, and bringing in Oscar Size, another coach that's on our team as a descending coach, made a big difference for me in terms of handling my bike on the descents. But it's been an evolution. It's something I still work on. It's something I really respect as a part of the sport. Cycling's not about just it's not just about who's the best at exercising. It's about also training those skills, the skills of descending, the skills of positioning. I do a lot of visualization techniques, and I write down a lot of goals prior to every stage. I write down where I want to be in position going into a key feature, how I see the race playing out. I spend a lot of time working on those aspects of the sport.
Okay, great. And let's talk a little bit about some of the early support structures that you had in your career. I remember when you first came out to Dunham out here, and you participated in a training camp that we had, and I had you race up this climb that I have used as a testing climb for many, many riders over the years, and you basically just chewed off its head and spit it out as you destroyed it. And I thought, wow, what a raw talent. And then I said, you know, I've got to see if I can help this kid. Tell me about some of your early influences and how that jumped you up a little bit, how they helped support you.
I mean, I think I've been really lucky in terms of the people I've been connected with in the cycling world. But in terms of the list of people that I'm most lucky to have encountered, certainly you're at the top. I was working full time when I first met you, and that opportunity came about because of a guy named Bruno Langlois, who was a teammate of mine at the time for Garneau Québécois, and you were working with Bruno, and I actually distinctly remember Bruno talking about how great of a coach you were, but saying, Mike, he'll never work with you. Paulo will never work with you. He's too busy. And so I was like, okay. But Bruno saw my potential, and I think he wanted you to help me out. And so he convinced me to come out to Montreal and do some testing. And a part of that testing was that Sutton climb. And I was so keen to impress you because I knew of your ability as a coach. I knew that you had the ability to like really get me to another level in cycling, and I wanted to do the best I could to impress you. And we went to Sutton, and I know I kept my cards close to the chest. I didn't show much emotion, I don't think, but I buried myself. I remember afterwards driving back from that ride and calling Ellie and being like, I did it. I impressed him, I think. And then after that, you told me to quit my job, and you'd sort out funding for me, and changed my life.
How did some of that funding come about? Let's talk about Sylvan a little bit and talk about B210.
Yeah. So again, I'm so fortunate to have had some great people in my corner, and Sylvan was one of those guys. Still is. I mean, he's helped out Canadian cycling so much over these past several years, and now helping Canadians get on Israeli Cycling Academy. I think we're really fortunate to have him as just like an ally to all Canadian cyclists. But at that time, you guys had this little project on the side where you'd help out somebody that really kind of fell outside of the funding windows. And I really did. I was 27 at the time and just didn't qualify for any of the government programs because of my age. I was just too old. I didn't qualify for a lot of teams because of I was outside of that development category. And so you guys had this little fund that they set up, and I mean, I say little, it was huge. To me, it was huge. And that first year, you got Sylvan stepped up and gave me some incredible funds that paid for training camps, that paid for my training, and then you guys upped it the next year to just help me get a power meter, help me do some really cool train camps, including one in Hawaii where I got the Haleakala climb record and start turning the head of JV my current team boss. And yeah, Sylvan made a massive difference. Then from there, transitioning into B210, I think you were able to convince JD at one point. I know JD, who was the head of B210 at the time, he was always telling you that a clean guy could never win in the World Tour. And you kept on telling him, I got this guy. And yeah, after I got a win at Tour of Utah one year, and managed to beat some big names like Frank Schleck and Chris Horner. Yeah, I impressed. I think we impressed them enough, and so they decided to take a shot on me. And B210 has been a sponsor since, and they've been an integral part to my success within the World Tour. They have played a huge role in terms of keeping me healthy, which has been a big task. As you know, I've had quite a few injuries, and they put together a really good integrated support team. And yeah, I've been when you bring up these names and we talk about these people, I just feel really lucky.
Well, it's great that you bring them up because, people like Sylvan Adams and J.D. Miller and Dom Gauthier for B210, they kind of sometimes operate in the background in the shadows, so it's great to hear you give them a shout out. And I give them the same shout out because I've worked with both of them for a long time. And I think they always operate in the background, take almost none of the glory, and are integral to the success of athletic development in Canada, and even Sylvan now with the fact that he's moved to Israel and made Aliyah, and now helping lead a World Tour cycling team. So it's great to see you. Give him a shout out. So I wanted to try to play a game with you to kind of conclude this interview. I think we've talked a little bit about your training and preparation. There is one more question I have before we start playing that game, and that's, you've converted from a runner to a cyclist, and I know that running kind of was something you had high hopes for during your time at Michigan. What is the earliest running memory that you have where you thought, wow, I could do something with this?
There are a couple, but one that really stuck out was when I first broke the Canadian youth record for the 3K. It was in 2003. I ran 8:16 for the 3K when I was 16 years old. And I remember, because at the time, the internet wasn't that great. I had an Athletics Canada magazine that came every month, a subscription to it. And they had posted the results from the previous World Youth Championships, which are under 17 and under. And I think the guy came like 5th or 4th, ran 8:16. And so I saw this in the magazine after I ran 8:16. I came home and I looked at this, and I just ran over to my parents. I was pointing out, I can run as fast as this guy. And that's when I started kind of thinking, okay, I've got a real shot at making it as a runner. I've got a shot at getting a full scholarship. And that's when I really started having to dream really big. I was a big dreamer already. I was pretty cocky. I had a lot of confidence. But yeah, that's when I really started to believe that I could do something special in running.
Oh, that's great. One last important point that I think is critical to mention here. For those of you listening, I've had the pleasure of working with Mike for a bunch of years now, as I said, and Mike's kind of the perfect storm between physical capacity, robustness, and mental resilience. And I'm not trying to blow smoke here, Mike, but you have the whole package, and it's really important that all of those packages are put together to understand that that's kind of what it takes to build a champion. You have some of that genetically, but you also work on those pieces. So you understand that you have God-given gifts, but you also understand that you have gaps. And a lot of our preparation has been oriented around shoring up those gaps so that you become more well-balanced and a more complete athlete, not just where the heart and lungs and legs are concerned, but also between the two ears. So it's been a really good experience working with a guy like you who has that kind of mental resiliency and robustness that you can learn and understand that you have weaknesses and continue to improve on them?
I think that also speaks volumes of you as a coach. I think like I came in when I started working with you. There's several reasons why I'm in the place that I'm at mentally and physically, and I think one, that's because I ruined one athletic career. I wasn't that athlete when I was a runner. I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't mentally strong enough, and for those reasons, I broke down. I also had some bad influences, some bad coaching when I was in university, but those things all contributed to me realizing what it took to make it to a level. Like having lost it, I spent a lot of time reflecting on where I went wrong as a runner. And so when I came into running, into cycling, I had better perspective. But then also, when I started working with you, you just brought such a level of professionalism, and you were so inspiring as a coach. I didn't have to worry about questioning what I was doing as an athlete. And I think that's one of the biggest keys to an athlete's success is when they don't spend a lot of time questioning the process. They just can do it. And so I had blind faith in your ability because you inspired that blind faith. And it made it a lot easier to make it in the world tour and make it to the level I'm at, because I didn't spend hours wondering if I was doing something wrong. You know, I know if I follow your training program, I'm going to go well.
Man, people are going to say this is like the Mutual Admiration Society over here in this interview.
We're giving each other ego massages. That's great.
Listen, we do this
all the time. We have dinner together, and we do pump each other up. It's great.
Yeah, we do. But
I come out of every training game with you with a bigger head. It's great.
Oh man, but you know what? It hasn't been always a smooth road in the sense that you've come up against a lot of challenges. But again, you've overcome them, and you're going to overcome this one too. When you broke your leg, I knew right away we could get you back if the Olympics were still scheduled. So, but now that they're not until next year, I think it gives you even more time and runway to be a contender again. I just hope they're in Tokyo on the exact same course, because that was tailor suited for you.
Yeah, same. I'm on the same page. That course I'm really excited about, and if it's the same course, I'm really excited about the Olympics to come.
And ultimately, you know what my role is as a coach? My role is as a coach is to, and it's going to sound a bit crazy, it's to make myself either redundant or obsolete. A lot of times what I see is, especially with young athletes, as they start to mature, their coaches actually tie a leash to them that binds them to the athlete a lot more than is healthy. And what really should happen as a coach is you're there in the beginning to provide a lot of structure, a lot of guidance, a lot of support, a lot of gap identification and work. And then as that athlete starts to manage those gaps better and become more knowledgeable, more confident, more performant, the actual role of the coach is to pull back from all of those structures, to play less of a role. And what often happens is the coach's ego gets in the way to say, oh, I'm going to hang on longer to this athlete and harder to this athlete because I want to bask in their glory. And it took a long time to learn to be able to let go of that ego component of coaching and say, you know what, let this guy bask in his glory of his success. Pull back on it. Let him be who you trained him to be, and play less of a role. And you've taught me that to a degree, where it's okay to pull back on those pieces and let the athlete soar while I move on to my next victim or my next project, So that's kind of an interesting piece for young coaches who may be watching to see.
Yeah, it's been a nice evolution in terms of how we work together. Like I remember when we first started working together, I did everything to a T. Like I was out to the second as to what you gave me. I'd do. Intervals I'd follow perfectly. Now, like obviously, I still follow the train that you prescribe, but there's a lot more input, and we have a nice working relationship, and it's grown almost to a point where it's a bit more of like this consultation, because I know what you want, I know where your head's at. I've learned so much from you that now I'm confident in terms of figuring out what's good for me, and then bouncing ideas off of you, and having this nice nice dynamic relationship. It's been really successful for me. It's been a great athlete coach relationship.
Great. Okay, so let's finish off this interview with, we're going to get into the final segment here. I like to call it the rapid fire questions. And I'm going to basically, a lot like in a bike race, I'm going to throw you some questions and I'm going to watch you try to navigate as quickly as you can through an answer. And they're usually going to be yes or no or one thing or another kind of answers. So it's important for those of you who are tuning in to know that I have not rehearsed any of this with Mike. So his answers are going to be right off the cuff. Okay, so you ready to go, Mike?
You know what? I am. I was just on I was just working out with my physiotherapist, and he was making me do planks while throwing trivia questions at me. So I think I'm sharp. I'm ready to go. The brain's been trained.
Okay, so what do you prefer, gravel or road?
Gravel.
Car or truck?
Truck.
Pasta or bread?
Bread.
Steep or gradual?
Steep. Always steep.
Short or long intervals?
Long. Long intervals for sure.
Dinner in or dinner out?
We're old. Dinner in.
Disc or rim?
Disc. I know it's controversial, but disc.
Yeah. Sweet or salty?
Ooh, salty. For sure, salty.
Bikes, clean or dirty?
I mean, I like a clean bike, but my bike is never clean. So I'm going to say dirty.
Streaming TV or book?
Oh, book. For sure, book.
Breakaway or Peloton?
Oh, breakaway. Breakaway is always the coolest, man.
Sleep in or early bird?
I was up at 6 a.m. this morning, man. Early bird.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Carbs or protein?
Carbs for days, man. Carbs for days. Except when you've broken a femur and you're sitting around for 4 weeks in quarantine, carbs are not great then.
All right, wine or beer?
Something I've been doing both of over the past 4 weeks, but I'm going to say wine.
Foam roller or stretching?
I'm not a glutton for punishment. I'm going to say stretching.
Classics or Grand Tours?
Classics.
I'm not talking pizza here, but deep dish or shallow rims?
Oh, shallow.
Aero or light?
Lightweight, always.
Laundry or vacuuming?
Can I say neither?
that says a lot.
Yeah. If I have to choose
socks?
vacuuming, I guess.
Low socks or high socks?
High socks.
Oh man, walk or barbecue?
Barbecue for sure.
Okay, last one. Besides anyone in your family, who would be your favorite quarantine roommate?
Anyone in my family, favorite quarantine roommate? Oh, I don't want a roommate that's not my family member.
If you were stuck with one, who would it be?
I'm always, when we do grand tours, I'm always the guy that says, put me up. I put my hand up for no roommate. I love it. I love not having a roommate. Maybe Nate Brown. Nate Brown was a former teammate of mine, just the world's greatest roommate. Never nice. Controversial. Yeah, fantastic roommate.
Wow, that's great. So look, Mike, I want to thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I'm sure you're going to be healing up quickly in the next few weeks. and we'll be seeing you on the road in the future. Thanks for your answers. Thanks for your candid response to some of my stuff, and it's much appreciated. And I'm sure we'll connect with you sometime in the next few weeks to provide viewers with some more content.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Paulo.
Thanks, bud. I'm going to just stop recording.